You're sitting at a red light. Or maybe you're just pulling into that empty parking lot late at night to answer a text message because you know better than to text and drive. You see the flashing lights in your rearview mirror, and that immediate jolt of adrenaline hits your chest like a shot of cheap whiskey. Your heart rate spikes, your palms get clammy, and your mind starts racing through a checklist of every possible mistake you might have made in the last 5 minutes. Did I roll through that stop sign? Was I speeding? Is my registration current? Did I signal that lane change? We have all been there, and if you haven't, just wait. Your turn is coming eventually. But here's the thing that most people never notice. Or if they do notice it, they dismiss it as just part of the routine. The officer gets out of their cruiser, they walk up to your driver's side window. But before they lean down to talk to you, they do something strange. They reach out and they touch your taillight. They might tap it, they might run a finger along the seam, or they might just give it a little pat. Most people see this and think nothing of it. They assume the cop is just leaning on the car for support, or maybe they are checking to see if the light is hot, which honestly doesn't even make sense if you think about it for more than 2 seconds. But here is the million-dollar question, and I want you to really think about your answer before you read any further. Have you ever been pulled over and watched an officer touch your taillight? And if so, what did you assume they were doing? I want you to take that thought, that memory if you have one, and I want you to hold on to it. Drop it in the comments section and tell me what you thought was happening in that moment. Because I promise you, whatever you thought, the reality is probably a little deeper, a little more calculated, and a lot more important to your future freedom than you ever imagined. Most people go their entire lives getting pulled over a dozen times and never once understand the strategic dance that is happening right outside their window. They never realize that that simple tap on the taillight is a piece of a much larger puzzle. A puzzle that involves officer safety, evidence preservation, courtroom strategy, and sometimes, just sometimes, a little bit of psychological manipulation. So buckle up, because we are going to take a deep dive into this. We are going to break down exactly why police officers touch your taillight, what it means for you legally, what you should do when it happens, and most importantly, what you should never do. Let's start by getting inside the head of the officer for a minute. I know. That might be a hard place for some of you to go, especially if you've had bad experiences or if you just generally subscribe to the idea that all cops are out to get you. But hear me out. If you want to navigate a traffic stop successfully, if you want to walk away with just a warning or even just a citation instead of a pair of handcuffs, you have to understand how they think. You have to understand their fears, their training, and their objectives. A traffic stop is statistically one of the most dangerous things a police officer does on a daily basis. It is not the high-speed chase you see in movies that gets cops killed. It is the mundane, the routine, the seemingly calm traffic stop where the driver has a warrant they don't plan on honoring or a gun they don't plan on surrendering. Officers approach thousands of cars over their careers, and each one of those cars is a potential ambush. So they develop habits, rituals, and techniques that are designed to keep them alive. The taillight tap is one of those techniques. Now, you might be thinking, how does tapping a piece of plastic keep a cop alive? That seems like the least effective self-defense move I have ever heard. And you would be partially right. It is not a martial arts move. It is not going to block a bullet. But it serves a purpose that is both practical and psychological. The first and most commonly cited reason for the taillight tap is to leave evidence. If an officer taps your taillight, they are leaving a fingerprint. In the old days, before we all became hyper-aware of DNA and forensic science, this was a way to tie the officer to the scene if something went wrong. If the officer is dragged by the car, if they are shot, if they go missing, and that car is later found, investigators can lift that fingerprint from the taillight and prove that this officer was in contact with this vehicle at this location. It is a grim reality of the job, but it is a reality. They are basically marking the car as their own. It is a breadcrumb trail that says, I was here, this car is connected to me. In an era where body cameras are common and GPS tracks every move, this might seem a little outdated, but it is so ingrained in police culture that it sticks around. But there is another layer to this that most people never consider, and this is where things get interesting from a legal standpoint. That fingerprint is not just for identifying a missing officer. It can also be used to establish chain of custody for evidence. Let's say you get pulled over and the officer suspects you are driving under the influence. They go through the field sobriety tests, they arrest you, and they take you downtown. Later, Your lawyer gets discovery and sees that the officer claims to have smelled alcohol or seen an open container. The defense might try to argue that the officer never actually approached the car, that maybe they are fabricating the whole story. But then the prosecutor points to the fingerprint on the taillight. That print puts the officer physically at your car, at your driver's side window, at the exact spot where they claim to have smelled that odor. It corroborates their testimony. It is a silent witness that says, yes, this officer was exactly where they said they were. So that little tap is not just about officer safety in the moment. It is about building a legally defensible case later on. It is about creating a piece of physical evidence that is hard to refute. Now, here is where I want you to pay close attention, because this is the part that most driving advice videos gloss over. They tell you the reason for the tap, and then they move on. But I want you to think about what that tap means for you as the driver. It means that the officer is already thinking about evidence. They are already thinking about how this stop might escalate. They are already in a mindset that is cautious, suspicious, and methodical. That should inform how you behave. You need to understand that from the moment those lights come on, everything you do is being watched, analyzed, and potentially used against you. The officer is not just writing a ticket. They are assessing whether you are a threat, whether you are impaired, whether you have something to hide. They are looking at your hands, your eyes, your movements. They are listening to your voice, your tone, your choice of words. The taillight tap is the first move in a chess game, and you need to know how to play your pieces. So, what should you do the moment you see that officer reach out and touch your taillight? The immediate answer is simple, and it is the same thing you should have been doing since you pulled over. You should sit still, keep your hands on the steering wheel where they can be seen, and wait for the officer to approach your window. Do not, under any circumstances, start rummaging through your glove box, reaching under your seat, or twisting around to grab your wallet from your back pocket. I know you are anxious to get your license and registration ready. I know you want to be prepared. But to an officer who just tapped your taillight and is walking up to your window with their adrenaline pumping, a moving figure inside the car is a threat. They do not know if you are reaching for your insurance card or a handgun. They have to assume the worst until they can see your hands and assess your demeanor. So sit tight. Keep your hands visible. When the officer gets to your window, tell them exactly what you are doing before you do it. Say something like, "Officer, my license is in my back pocket. I am going to reach for it now." That simple act of communication can defuse a lot of tension. But let's go deeper than that. Let's talk about the psychology of the stop and how the taillight tap fits into a broader pattern of behavior that you need to recognize. Some lawyers and legal experts will tell you that the taillight tap is also a distraction technique. The officer touches the car to create a noise, a subtle tap that draws your attention to the rear of the vehicle or to the side mirror. While you are distracted by that tap or by watching the officer in your mirror, they are approaching your window and getting a look inside your car before you have a chance to hide anything or compose yourself. It is a split second of misdirection. Think about it. You are sitting there, nervous, watching your rearview mirror. You see the officer get out, you see them walk toward you, and then you see them reach out and touch the back of your car. For a moment, your brain goes, "What was that? Did they just hit my car? Did something fall off?" That momentary lapse in attention is all they need to get close to your window and catch you off guard. It is a tactic, and a clever one at that. Now, I am not telling you this to make you paranoid. I am telling you this so you can be prepared. Awareness is your greatest ally in any interaction with law enforcement. If you know that the tap is coming, and you know what it means, you can resist the urge to turn around or get distracted. You can keep your focus on the task at hand, which is presenting yourself as a calm, cooperative, low-threat individual. You want the officer to walk away from your car thinking, "That person was polite, they were respectful, they had nothing to hide." That is how you get warnings instead of tickets, and that is how you avoid having the stop escalate into something more serious. But here is where we have to talk about the hard stuff. The uncomfortable reality. Because not every traffic stop is about a broken taillight or a rolling stop. Sometimes, the stop is pretextual. Sometimes, the officer is using a minor infraction as an excuse to investigate something else. They might suspect you have drugs in the car, or that you are transporting cash, or that you have a warrant. In those cases, the taillight tap takes on an even more sinister tone from a driver's perspective. The officer is not just leaving a fingerprint for safety. They are building a narrative. They are creating a record that they were at your car, that they observed something, that they had a reason to be there. And if they later claimed that they saw something in plain view through your window that gave them probable cause to search, that taillight tap is part of the story that justifies their presence at that window in the first place. I want you to think about the legal concept of plain view doctrine. If an officer is lawfully in a position to see something, and they see contraband or evidence of a crime in plain sight, they can usually seize it without a warrant. But the key phrase there is lawfully in a position. The officer has to be somewhere they are allowed to be. Walking up to your driver's side window during a traffic stop is absolutely lawful. That is the whole point of the stop. So when they tap that taillight, they are confirming that they approached your vehicle, that they were in that lawful position, and that anything they saw through your window at that moment is fair game. It is a small piece of a much larger legal puzzle. Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, well, that sounds like a violation of my rights. That sounds like cops playing games. And you know what? Sometimes it is. Sometimes, officers absolutely use these tactics to gather evidence in ways that push the limits of what is acceptable. But here is the truth you have to accept. The law gives police a lot of leeway during a traffic stop. The Supreme Court has ruled again and again that officers can take certain steps to protect themselves and investigate their suspicions. You cannot stop them from approaching your car. You cannot stop them from looking in your windows. You cannot stop them from asking questions. What you can do is know your rights and exercise them appropriately. And that brings us to the most important part of this entire discussion. What should you do immediately after the officer touches your taillight and approaches your window? We already covered keeping your hands visible and communicating your movements. But what about answering questions? What about consenting to a search? This is where most people make the biggest mistake of their lives, and they do it because they are nervous, because they want to be polite, because they think that cooperating will get them out of trouble faster. The officer might ask, "Do you mind if I take a quick look in your car?" Or, "You don't have anything illegal in there, do you?" Or, "Can you step out of the vehicle for me?" And in that moment, you have a choice. You can say yes and waive your Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. Or you can say no and potentially escalate the situation, but also protect your rights. Here is my advice, and this comes from hours of talking to defense attorneys, watching hours of body camera footage, and reading countless court rulings. Be polite, but be firm. If the officer asks for consent to search, you can say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches. I am respecting you, and I ask that you respect my rights." That is not an aggressive statement. It is a statement of boundaries. And here's the thing that might surprise you. In many cases, if you are calm, polite, and clear, the officer will back off. They might be annoyed, but they will often finish writing the ticket and let you go, especially if they don't have probable cause to search without your consent. The moment you consent, you have given them the green light to tear your car apart, to bring a drug dog, to prolong the stop. You have handed them the keys to your privacy on a silver platter. But let's circle back to the taillight tap specifically. There is a nuance here that I haven't seen discussed anywhere else, and I think it is worth mentioning. Some officers use the taillight tap as a way to gauge your reaction. They tap the car and then watch to see if you jump, if you turn around, if you start acting nervous. They are looking for indicators of guilt or impairment. If you are sober and have nothing to hide, you might not even react. You might just sit there calmly, waiting. But if you are intoxicated, or if you have a warrant, or if there is a bag of something illegal under your seat, your reaction might be different. You might flinch. You might look back. You might start moving things around. That reaction gives the officer information. It tells them that you are on edge, that something is off, that they need to dig deeper. So again, the best thing you can do is nothing. Just sit there. Let them tap. Let them walk up. Let the whole process unfold without giving them any extra reasons to be suspicious. I want to share a story with you that illustrates how this all plays out in real life. A friend of mine, let's call him Mike, got pulled over a few years ago for a broken headlight. He was driving home late from work, tired, just wanting to get to bed. The officer approached, did the taillight tap, and walked up. Mike had his hands on the wheel, the interior light on, his license already out and resting on the dashboard. The officer asked the usual questions. Where are you coming from? Where are you going? Do you know why I stopped you? Mike answered honestly and politely. Then the officer asked if he had anything illegal in the car. Mike said no. Then the officer asked if he could take a quick look. Now, Mike had nothing to hide. His car was clean. But he also knew that consenting to a search sets a bad precedent. So he said, "Officer, I don't have anything to hide, but I don't consent to searches. I prefer you just write me the ticket for the headlight." The officer paused, looked at him for a long moment, and then said, "Okay, I'll be right back." He went to his cruiser, ran the plates, checked for warrants, and came back with a warning. He told Mike to get the headlight fixed and sent him on his way. Mike was polite, he was firm, and he got out of there in 10 minutes without his car being tossed. Now, contrast that with another story I heard from a lawyer. A guy gets pulled over for speeding. He's nervous, he's fumbling around, he drops his wallet, he's apologizing profusely. The officer asks if he can search the car, and the guy says, "Sure, go ahead, I've got nothing to hide." The officer finds a roach in the ashtray, a joint that the guy forgot was even there from a party weeks ago. Now he's facing a possession charge, court costs, maybe even probation, all because he consented to a search when he didn't have to. The officer didn't have probable cause. He didn't smell marijuana. He just asked, and the guy said yes. That one word, that simple act of cooperation, turned a fix-it ticket into a criminal matter. So when you see that hand touch your taillight, let it be a reminder. A reminder that this is a legal encounter. A reminder that you have rights. A reminder that every action you take, every word you say, is being observed and recorded. You are not being rude by asserting your rights. You are being smart. You are protecting yourself. And honestly, most officers will respect you more for it, as long as you do it with a calm and respectful tone. Nobody likes being yelled at. Nobody likes being accused. But if you treat the officer like a human being, and you expect the same in return, you can navigate this situation with dignity. Let's talk for a minute about body cameras and dash cams, because this technology has changed the game for everyone. In the past, a traffic stop was a he said, she said affair. The officer could claim you were belligerent, you could claim they were rude, and it was hard to prove either side. Now, more and more departments are requiring cameras, and that footage is gold for both sides. If you are calm, polite, and respectful, the camera proves it. If the officer violates your rights, the camera proves that too. But here's the catch. The camera also proves if you are lying, if you are combative, if you are reaching for something you shouldn't be. So treat that camera as your silent witness. Act as if everything you do is going to be played back in a courtroom, because one day it might be. And that brings us back to the taillight tap. On camera, that tap is captured. It is a timestamp. It is a marker that says, at this moment, the officer made contact with the vehicle. If the officer later claims that they saw something suspicious inside your car at that exact moment, the footage can corroborate or contradict that claim. It is another layer of accountability in a system that is increasingly reliant on digital evidence. Now, I want to address something that might be on your mind. What if the officer touches your taillight and you have something illegal in the trunk? Does that tap give them probable cause to search the trunk? Absolutely not. Touching the taillight does not give them any legal authority to search your car. It is not a magic key that unlocks your trunk. It is simply a tactic, a habit, a piece of the puzzle. They still need probable cause or your consent to go digging around in your belongings. So don't panic if you have something in the trunk that shouldn't be there. The tap itself is not going to expose it, but your behavior might. If you start sweating, if you start acting nervous, if you start trying to block their view, you are giving them the reasonable suspicion they need to dig deeper. So again, calmness is your superpower. Let's also talk about the moments after the stop ends. You've got your warning or your ticket, the officer is walking back to their cruiser, and you are getting ready to pull away. There is one more thing you should do, and it is something that most people forget. Take a moment. Take a deep breath. Wait until the officer is back in their car and the lights are off before you move. Do not peel out. Do not speed away. Do not do anything that might give them a reason to pull you over again. Just drive away normally, like nothing happened. And when you get to your destination, if you are the kind of person who wants to be prepared for next time, check your taillights. Make sure they are working. Make sure your registration is current. Make sure your license is valid. The best way to win a traffic stop is to avoid giving them a reason to stop you in the first place. But we both know that sometimes it doesn't matter how careful you are. Sometimes you're going to get pulled over for something you didn't do or for a minor infraction that you genuinely didn't notice. And in those moments, the taillight tap is going to happen. It is almost a certainty. And now you know what it means. You know that it is about officer safety, about evidence preservation, about psychology, and about the law. You know that your response should be stillness, calmness, and respect. You know that you have rights, and you know how to assert them without being confrontational. I want to leave you with one final thought, and it is something that I wish someone had told me years ago when I was younger and more naive about these interactions. The traffic stop is not just about the ticket. It is not just about the law. It is about human interaction. It is about two strangers meeting on the side of the road, one with a gun and a badge, one with a steering wheel and a racing heart. The outcome of that interaction depends on so many variables, but the one variable you can control is yourself. You can control your tone. You can control your movements. You can control your words. You can choose to be the person who de-escalates, who respects, who protects their own rights without trampling on anyone else's. That is power. That is freedom. And it starts the moment you see that hand reach out and touch your taillight. So the next time you are driving and you see those flashing lights in your mirror, remember this conversation. Remember the tap. Remember what it means. Remember what to do. And if you have a story, if you have been through this, if you have watched that hand reach out and touch your car, I want to hear about it. I want to know what you thought, what you did, how it turned out. Drop it in the comments. Let's build a conversation. Let's learn from each other. Because the more we know, the safer we are, and the better we can navigate this complicated world we live in. Drive safe, know your rights, and never forget that a little knowledge can make all the difference.